Everything you've been told about karma is a lie designed to keep you powerless. You've heard it 1,000 times. Do good things and good things happen to you. Hurt someone and the universe will hurt you back. It's cosmic justice, right? Wrong. That's not how karma actually works. That's just a watered-down version, sold to keep you passive, waiting for some invisible force to balance the scales while you sit back and do nothing. The real mechanics of karma are far more complex, far more immediate, and far more under your control than any guru has ever told you. Because here's what they don't want you to realize. Karma isn't some distant cosmic accountant keeping track of your good and bad deeds. It's not punishment or reward from the universe. It's not even about morality. Real karma is about energy, frequency, and the patterns you create in your own consciousness. And once you understand how it actually works, you'll never see your life the same way again. Most people think karma is like a cosmic vending machine. Put in good deeds, get good results. Put in bad behavior, get punished later. But that's not karma. That's just wishful thinking wrapped in spiritual language. The word karma comes from Sanskrit, and it simply means action. Not good action, not bad action, just action. And every action creates a pattern, a vibrational imprint that echoes through your reality until it's resolved. But here's where it gets interesting. These patterns don't wait for some future lifetime to play out. They're happening right now, in real time, through the lens of your own consciousness. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every choice you make is creating ripples in the field of your awareness. And those ripples determine what you attract, what you experience, and what keeps showing up in your life over and over again. The ancient texts never described karma as a reward and punishment system. They described it as the law of cause and effect, operating through consciousness itself. You are not just a victim of your karma, you are the creator of it. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. Because once you see the real mechanics, you realize you've been given the keys to reprogram your entire reality. But first, let's destroy the biggest lie of all. The idea that karma is slow, that it takes lifetimes to unfold, that you have to wait for the universe to deliver justice. That's not karma. That's a story told to keep you believing you're powerless. Real karma is instant. It's happening in every moment through the filter of your own perception, through the patterns encoded in your subconscious, through the energy you carry in your body. Think about it this way. Have you ever noticed that some people seem to attract drama wherever they go? It's not because the universe is punishing them. It's because they carry the vibration of conflict in their energy field. They expect it, they unconsciously create it, and they keep experiencing it until they shift the pattern. That's karma in action. Not some cosmic force, but the immediate reflection of their internal state. Or consider someone who constantly feels like a victim, always finding themselves in situations where they're taken advantage of. The traditional view would say they must have done something terrible in a past life, but the real explanation is simpler and more empowering. They're carrying a victim pattern in their consciousness, broadcasting that frequency, and reality keeps reflecting it back to them. Change the pattern, change the karma. This is why some people can do terrible things and seem to get away with it, while others suffer despite being genuinely good people. It's not about cosmic justice. It's about the patterns running in their consciousness. Someone who feels guilty will attract punishment even if they've done nothing wrong. Someone who feels deserving will attract abundance even if they haven't earned it by traditional standards. The universe doesn't judge your actions. It reflects your inner state. But here's what makes this truly powerful. Once you understand that karma is just patterns in consciousness, you realize those patterns can be changed. You're not stuck with the karma you were born with. You're not doomed to repeat the same cycles forever. You can literally reprogram your karmic patterns by shifting your consciousness, your beliefs, your emotional patterns, and your energy. The gurus won't tell you this because it threatens their entire business model. If you knew you could clear your own karma, resolve your own patterns, and shift your own reality, you wouldn't need to spend years in spiritual dependency hoping for enlightenment. You wouldn't need elaborate rituals, expensive ceremonies, or complex practices. You would realize that the power was always in your hands. Most spiritual teachings present karma as something you have to accept, endure, or slowly work through over multiple lifetimes. But what if that's exactly backwards? What if karma isn't something you have to suffer through, but something you can consciously work with? What if every challenge, every pattern, every repeated experience is actually an opportunity to upgrade your consciousness and shift your reality? This is where the real understanding begins. Karma isn't happening to you, it's happening through you. Every experience you have is filtered through the lens of your consciousness, shaped by your beliefs, colored by your emotional patterns, and reflected back to you as your reality. Change the lens, change the reflection. It's that simple and that profound. But changing karmic patterns isn't about positive thinking or spiritual bypassing. It's about facing the patterns directly, understanding how they were created, and consciously choosing to respond differently. It's about recognizing that every trigger, every emotional reaction, every repeated situation is showing you exactly where your unconscious patterns are still running the show. The moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim of karma and start seeing yourself as the conscious creator of your patterns, everything shifts. You move from passive recipient to active participant. You stop waiting for the universe to fix your problems and start taking responsibility for the energy you're putting out. You realize that every moment is an opportunity to create new karma, to establish new patterns, to shift the trajectory of your entire life. This is the knowledge that's been hidden, diluted, and distorted by centuries of spiritual teaching that keeps people dependent rather than empowered. Because the truth is, you don't need anyone else to clear your karma. You don't need elaborate practices or years of meditation. You need understanding. You need awareness. And you need the willingness to take responsibility for the patterns you've been unconsciously creating. Every emotion you suppress becomes a karmic pattern. Every belief you carry becomes a filter for your reality. Every unconscious reaction becomes a program running in the background of your life. But the moment you bring consciousness to these patterns, the moment you see them clearly, they begin to dissolve. Not through struggle, not through years of spiritual work, but through the simple act of conscious awareness. This is what the ancient masters knew, but what got lost in translation. Karma isn't about punishment or reward. It's about consciousness recognizing itself through experience. And once you see that, once you really understand that your external reality is just a mirror of your internal patterns, you realize you've been given the most powerful tool in existence, the ability to change your life by changing your consciousness. But understanding the mechanics is just the beginning. The real question is, what do you do with this knowledge? How do you actually identify the patterns that are running your life? How do you shift the deep unconscious programs that keep creating the same experiences over and over again? And most importantly, how do you break free from karmic cycles that might have been running for generations? The answer lies in understanding something most people never realize. Your karma isn't just your own. You inherited patterns from your family line, your culture, your collective unconscious. You're carrying energetic imprints that were never yours to begin with, playing out dramas that started generations before you were born. And until you recognize this, you'll keep wondering why certain patterns feel so impossible to break. Think about your family dynamics. Notice how the same themes repeat across generations, the same relationship patterns, the same financial struggles, the same emotional wounds playing out in slightly different forms. That's not coincidence. That's inherited karma. Patterns of consciousness passed down through bloodlines like genetic code, except these patterns live in the energy field, not in DNA. Your great-grandmother's unexpressed grief becomes your mother's depression, becomes your anxiety. Your grandfather's suppressed rage becomes your father's workaholism, becomes your addiction. The patterns morph and adapt, but the core frequency remains the same, echoing through the family system, until someone finally breaks the cycle. But here's what's revolutionary about this understanding. You don't just inherit these patterns. You chose them. Before you incarnated, your soul looked at the karmic patterns available in your family line and said, "I'll take that one. I'll work with that energy. I'll be the one to transform it." You didn't come here to suffer under the weight of ancestral karma. You came here to alchemize it, to turn the lead of inherited dysfunction into the gold of conscious evolution. Every trigger you feel, every emotional reaction that seems disproportionate to the situation, every pattern that feels bigger than your personal experience, that's ancestral karma asking to be transformed. And the moment you stop taking it personally, the moment you realize you're not just healing yourself but an entire lineage, everything changes. You're not just clearing your own patterns. You're doing the work your ancestors couldn't do. You're completing cycles that have been running for centuries. This is why some people seem born with certain gifts, while others struggle with inexplicable challenges. It's not random. It's not unfair. It's the soul choosing specific karmic patterns to work with, specific frequencies to transform. The person born into wealth might be here to learn generosity and service. The person born into poverty might be here to discover their inherent worth and power. The patterns aren't punishment. They're curriculum. But the educational system never taught you this. Religion never explained it. Even most spiritual teachers miss this crucial piece. They focus on individual karma while ignoring the collective patterns that shape your reality. They talk about personal responsibility while overlooking the inherited programs running in your subconscious. They promise enlightenment through individual effort while ignoring the systemic patterns that need to be addressed. The truth is, you can meditate for decades, do therapy for years, practice every healing modality available, and still find yourself stuck in the same patterns if you're not addressing the deeper karmic programs. Because some patterns aren't just personal, they're archetypal, they're collective, they're woven into the fabric of human consciousness itself. Consider the pattern of unworthiness that seems to plague so many people. It's not just individual low self-esteem. It's a collective wound created by centuries of hierarchical systems that taught people they were less than, that power belonged to others, that their voice didn't matter. That wound lives in the collective unconscious, and until it's healed at that level, individuals will keep struggling with the same issue no matter how much personal work they do. Or look at the pattern of scarcity that drives so much human behavior. It's not just about money, it's about a deep collective memory of lack, of not enough resources, of having to compete for survival. That pattern gets triggered every time there's economic uncertainty, every time resources feel limited, every time someone else's success feels like a threat to your own. And no amount of abundance affirmations will clear it until you address it at the karmic level. This is where the real work begins, not just clearing your personal patterns, but recognizing which patterns belong to you and which ones you inherited. Learning to distinguish between your authentic emotional responses and the inherited trauma that gets triggered in certain situations. Understanding that some of your deepest wounds aren't even yours. They're echoes from the past, asking to be healed. The moment you realize this, you stop fighting yourself and start working with the patterns consciously. You stop judging yourself for having certain reactions and start seeing them as information. You stop trying to fix yourself and start seeing yourself as an alchemist, transforming inherited lead into conscious gold. But most people never get to this level of understanding because they're stuck in the surface layer of karma, thinking it's about being good or bad, thinking it's about individual actions and consequences. They never realize they're part of a much larger web of consciousness, that their personal healing ripples backward through time and forward into the future, that every pattern they transform affects not just their own life but the entire field of human consciousness. This is the secret the gurus won't tell you, not because they're hiding it, but because most of them don't understand it themselves. They're still operating from the old paradigm of individual enlightenment, personal salvation, separate selves working toward individual liberation. They haven't realized that karma is collective, that healing is systemic, that transformation happens through the web of consciousness itself. Once you see this, everything changes. You stop trying to escape your karma and start embracing it as sacred work. You stop seeing your challenges as personal failures and start recognizing them as evolutionary opportunities. You realize you're not just healing yourself. You're healing the world, one pattern at a time. But understanding the collective nature of karma is just the beginning. The real question becomes, how do you actually work with these patterns? How do you distinguish between what's yours and what's inherited? How do you transform karmic patterns without getting lost in them? And most importantly, how do you break cycles that have been running for lifetimes without creating new ones in the process? The answer lies in understanding something most people never grasp about: karmic transformation. You can't heal what you can't feel, and you can't transform what you refuse to acknowledge. But here's the trap most people fall into. They think feeling the pattern means drowning in it, getting lost in the story, reliving every trauma and disappointment. That's not healing. That's re-traumatization, dressed up as spiritual work. Real karmic transformation happens through conscious witnessing. You learn to observe the patterns without becoming them, to feel the emotions without being consumed by them, to recognize the programs without being controlled by them. It's like becoming a scientist of your own consciousness, studying the patterns with curiosity rather than judgment, with fascination rather than resistance. When a karmic pattern gets triggered, most people either suppress it or explode with it. Both responses keep the pattern intact. Suppression drives it deeper into the unconscious, where it continues to run the show from the shadows. Expression without awareness just reinforces the neural pathways, making the pattern stronger. But there's a third option that most people never discover: conscious response. Conscious response means feeling the pattern fully while simultaneously observing it from a higher perspective. It means saying, "I notice anger arising," instead of "I am angry." It means recognizing, "This is the abandonment pattern activating," instead of "Everyone always leaves me." It's the difference between being hijacked by your karma and consciously working with it. This shift from identification to observation is what breaks the karmic cycle, because karma only has power when it's unconscious. The moment you bring full awareness to a pattern, it begins to lose its grip on you. Not through force, not through resistance, but through the simple act of conscious recognition. Light dissolves shadows, not by fighting them, but by revealing what was always there. But here's where most spiritual teachings get it wrong. They tell you to observe your patterns with detachment, as if you're supposed to become some emotionless robot floating above human experience. That's spiritual bypassing, and it creates new karma instead of clearing old karma. The goal isn't to transcend your humanity, it's to bring consciousness to it. You don't heal karmic patterns by rising above them. You heal them by moving through them with full awareness. You feel the fear completely while knowing you are not the fear. You experience the rage fully while understanding you are not the rage. You let the grief flow through you while recognizing you are the space in which grief arises and passes away. This is the art of conscious feeling, and it's the most powerful tool for karmic transformation that exists. Because when you can feel without becoming, when you can experience without identifying, when you can allow without resisting, the patterns naturally complete themselves and dissolve back into the consciousness from which they arose. Think about it this way. Every emotion is energy in motion. When you resist an emotion, you stop its natural flow and create stagnation. When you identify with an emotion, you solidify it into identity and create repetition. But when you allow an emotion to flow through you with full awareness, it completes its cycle and transforms into wisdom. This is why people can do years of therapy talking about their patterns, but still find themselves stuck in the same cycles. They're working with the story of the pattern, not the energy of the pattern. They're analyzing the trauma, not allowing it to move through them. They're understanding their karma intellectually while keeping it locked in their body and energy field. Real karmic healing happens in the body, not in the mind. Because karma isn't just mental programming. It's energetic imprinting stored in your nervous system, your cellular memory, your electromagnetic field. You can think your way to understanding, but you have to feel your way to freedom. Every unprocessed emotion becomes a karmic anchor. Every suppressed experience becomes a pattern waiting to repeat. Every unexpressed truth becomes a distortion in your energy field. The body keeps the score, as they say, and the body is where the real work happens. But working with karma through the body doesn't mean you need elaborate healing modalities or expensive treatments. It means you need to develop a conscious relationship with your own feeling body. You need to learn to breathe with discomfort instead of breathing it away. You need to discover how to stay present with intensity instead of dissociating from it. When a karmic pattern activates in your body, you feel it as sensation before you think it as story. The tightness in your chest before you label it as anxiety. The clenching in your jaw before you call it anger. The sinking in your stomach before you identify it as abandonment. If you can catch the sensation before it becomes story, you can work with the energy directly, instead of getting lost in the narrative. This is where breath becomes your greatest ally. Not breathing techniques or complicated pranayama, but simple conscious breathing that keeps you present with what's arising in your body. When you breathe with a sensation instead of against it, you give it permission to move, to complete its cycle, to transform into something else. The sensation of fear, breathed through consciously, becomes the energy of aliveness. The sensation of anger, breathed through with awareness, becomes the power of boundaries. The sensation of grief, breathed through with presence, becomes the openness of love. Every karmic pattern contains its own medicine, but only if you're willing to feel it fully instead of pushing it away. Consciously, instead of against it. Your nervous system knows how to discharge trauma when you stop interfering with its natural processes. Your energy field knows how to clear karmic imprints when you give it space to do what it's designed to do. But most people have been conditioned to fear their own feeling body, to medicate discomfort, to avoid intensity at all costs. They've been taught that emotional pain is pathology instead of information, that karmic activation is mental illness instead of evolutionary opportunity, that the symptoms are the problem instead of the solution trying to emerge. What if your depression isn't a chemical imbalance, but unprocessed grief asking to be felt? What if your anxiety isn't a disorder, but your nervous system responding to inherited trauma that's ready to be cleared? What if your anger isn't a problem, but boundary energy that's been suppressed for so long it's become explosive? This doesn't mean you shouldn't seek professional help when needed. It means you should question whether the help you're receiving is actually helping you process and transform your patterns or just managing and suppressing them. Because managing symptoms creates dependency, while transforming patterns creates freedom. The pharmaceutical approach to emotional distress is the ultimate karma creator. It teaches you that your natural responses are wrong, that your feeling body can't be trusted, that healing comes from outside rather than within. It creates the karmic pattern of powerlessness while pretending to solve the very problems it perpetuates. Real karmic healing happens when you reclaim authority over your own consciousness, when you trust your body's wisdom over external authority, when you learn to be with your experience instead of constantly trying to change it. It happens when you realize that every sensation is sacred, every emotion is intelligent, every pattern is purposeful, even when it's painful. This is the level of karmic work that actually creates lasting transformation. Not positive thinking or spiritual practices that keep you floating above your humanity, but conscious embodiment that brings awareness to every level of your being. Not transcending your patterns, but integrating them. Not escaping your karma, but alchemizing it into wisdom. But even understanding how to work with karma through conscious embodiment is just part of the picture, because there's another layer that most people never discover. A level of karmic operation that's so subtle, so immediate, so constantly active, that it's invisible to most seekers. It's the karma of attention itself, the patterns created by where you place your awareness moment by moment throughout your day. Every time you focus on what's wrong, you strengthen the neural pathways of dissatisfaction. Every time you rehearse old grievances, you reactivate those karmic patterns in your energy field. Every time you imagine worst-case scenarios, you send that frequency out into the quantum field, where it magnetizes matching experiences back to you. This is the karma most people create unconsciously, every single day, through the habitual patterns of their attention. They spend hours replaying past hurts, imagining future fears, focusing on what's missing, criticizing what's present, and then they wonder why their life feels stuck, why the same problems keep recurring, why positive affirmations and vision boards don't seem to work. Your attention is your most powerful creative force, and wherever you place it consistently, becomes your reality. This isn't New Age wishful thinking, this is neuroscience. Your brain literally rewires itself based on what you focus on repeatedly. Your nervous system adapts to whatever you give your attention to most frequently. Your energy field aligns with whatever you're consistently contemplating. If you want to understand someone's karma, don't look at their actions, look at their attention patterns. What do they think about when their mind is idle? What do they focus on when they scroll through their phone? What stories do they tell themselves when things go wrong? The answers to these questions will show you exactly why their life looks the way it does. This is why changing your life requires changing your attention patterns, not just your actions. You can take all the right steps, make all the right choices, do all the right things, but if your attention is still habitually focused on lack, problems, and limitations, you'll keep creating more of the same karmic patterns no matter what you do externally. But here's the revolutionary part. The moment you realize that your attention creates your karma, you also realize that you can change your karma instantly by redirecting your attention consciously. You don't have to wait for external circumstances to shift. You don't have to complete years of therapy or spiritual practice. You can begin transforming your karmic patterns right now by choosing where to place your awareness in this moment. This is the fastest, most direct path to karmic transformation that exists. Not through complex healing modalities or elaborate spiritual practices, but through the moment-by-moment choice of conscious attention. Every time you catch your mind rehearsing old patterns and choose to focus on something else, you're literally rewiring your karma. Every time you notice yourself spiraling into familiar negative thoughts and deliberately shift your attention to what's working in your life, you're changing your vibrational frequency and attracting different experiences. But most people resist this simple truth because it makes them completely responsible for their reality. It's easier to blame circumstances, other people, past trauma, or inherited patterns than to accept that your current experience is largely the result of where you've been placing your attention. It's more comfortable to see yourself as a victim of karma than as the conscious creator of it. The moment you fully accept responsibility for your attention patterns, you reclaim the power to change your life. Not through force, not through struggle, not through years of healing work, but through the simple practice of conscious awareness, moment by moment by moment. This is the ultimate karma hack that no guru will teach you, because it threatens their entire business model. If you knew you could transform your karma instantly through conscious attention, you wouldn't need years of expensive workshops, retreats, and healing sessions. You wouldn't need someone else to clear your patterns or tell you what your karma means. You would realize that the power to change everything has always been in your hands. But there's one final layer that makes this even more powerful, and it's the most closely guarded secret of all. Your karma isn't just created by your attention patterns. It's created by the quality of presence you bring to each moment. Two people can focus on the exact same thing and create completely different karma based on the state of consciousness they're operating from. If you focus on abundance from a place of desperation, you create the karma of lack. If you focus on love from a place of neediness, you create the karma of rejection. If you focus on success from a place of unworthiness, you create the karma of failure. It's not what you focus on that matters most. It's the frequency you're vibrating at while you focus. This is why positive thinking often backfires. People try to think positive thoughts while carrying the energy of doubt, fear, or desperation. The universe doesn't respond to your thoughts. It responds to your state of being. And if your being is contracted with worry while your thoughts are trying to be positive, you'll create the karma of internal conflict and external confusion. Real karmic transformation happens when you align your thoughts, emotions, and energy at the same frequency. When you think about abundance while feeling genuinely grateful for what you have, when you imagine love while your heart is actually open, when you visualize success while embodying the confidence of someone who knows they're worthy, this is the difference between trying to manipulate karma and actually transforming it. Manipulation comes from separation, from the belief that you have to trick the universe into giving you what you want. Transformation comes from alignment, from the recognition that you and the universe are not separate, that your consciousness is the very fabric through which karma operates. But even this level of understanding is just preparation for the ultimate truth about karma that changes everything. Once you see it, are you ready for this? Because once you understand what I'm about to tell you, you can never go back to seeing karma the way you did before. Here it is. Karma doesn't exist outside of consciousness. There is no cosmic force keeping track of your deeds. There is no universal law operating independently of your awareness. Karma is consciousness, recognizing itself through experience. It's the universe becoming aware of itself through you. Every karmic pattern you experience is consciousness exploring a particular frequency, learning about itself through that vibration, evolving through that experience. The anger karma isn't punishment for past actions. It's consciousness exploring the frequency of anger until it learns what anger has to teach. The abandonment karma isn't cosmic payback for abandoning others. It's consciousness experiencing separation until it remembers its inherent wholeness. This means you're not a victim of karma. You're not even the creator of karma. You are karma itself. You are consciousness in motion, exploring every possible experience, learning through every pattern, evolving through every cycle. The part of you that suffers from karma and the part of you that creates karma are both illusions. There's only consciousness playing every role, experiencing every frequency, becoming aware of itself through infinite expressions. When you realize this, blame becomes impossible because there's no one to blame. Guilt becomes meaningless because there's no separate self to feel guilty. Victim consciousness dissolves because there's no one doing anything to anyone else. There's only the one, consciousness experiencing itself through apparent multiplicity, learning about itself through seeming separation, awakening to itself through the illusion of karma. This is why the masters throughout history have said that karma is ultimately empty, that suffering is optional, that enlightenment is simply recognizing what was always already true. Not because karma doesn't exist, but because karma is just consciousness playing hide and seek with itself, creating apparent problems so it can discover apparent solutions, generating apparent separation so it can experience apparent unity. The moment you see this clearly, karma stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you recognize as your own deeper nature expressing itself. The patterns don't disappear, but your relationship to them transforms completely. You stop fighting your karma and start dancing with it. You stop trying to escape your patterns and start appreciating them as perfect expressions of consciousness exploring itself. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop growing. It means you realize that the one who wants to grow and the one who resists growth are both movements of the same consciousness. The seeker and the sought, the problem and the solution, the karma and the one who experiences it, are all expressions of the same infinite awareness, pretending to be separate so it can play the game of becoming whole. Once you see this, the whole spiritual search reveals itself as consciousness entertaining itself, creating apparent bondage so it can experience apparent liberation, generating apparent ignorance so it can discover apparent wisdom. You realize you were never broken, and therefore never needed fixing. You were never lost, and therefore never needed finding. You were never separate, and therefore never needed reuniting. This is the final understanding that renders all karma teaching obsolete, not because karma stops operating, but because you realize you are the karma. You are the consciousness through which all patterns arise and dissolve. You are the awareness in which all experiences appear and disappear. You are the very field in which the entire cosmic play unfolds. From this recognition, life becomes effortless. Not because challenges disappear, but because you're no longer fighting reality. You're no longer trying to escape your humanity or transcend your circumstances. You're simply being what you've always been. Consciousness itself, enjoying its own infinite creativity through the apparent limitation of individual experience. This is what the gurus won't tell you, because the moment you realize it, you no longer need gurus. The moment you recognize your true nature as consciousness itself, you stop looking for answers outside yourself. You realize that every teacher, every teaching, every technique was just consciousness pointing you back to what you already are. The journey ends where it began, in the simple recognition of what's looking through your eyes right now, not what you think is looking, not what you believe is looking, but what's actually looking. That pure awareness that's been present through every karmic experience, unchanged by every pattern, unaffected by every drama. That's what you are. That's what karma is. That's what everything is. And once you know this directly, not as concept but as lived reality, karma becomes play instead of prison, patterns become poetry instead of problems, and life becomes the cosmic joke it was always meant to be. Consciousness pretending to be unconscious so it can wake up to itself, creating apparent separation so it can experience the joy of coming home to what it never actually left. If this resonates, if something in you recognizes the truth of what's been shared here, then you're ready for the deeper teachings that can't be spoken in public spaces. You're ready to explore the mysteries that exist beyond the reach of algorithms and advertisers. The real work begins when you stop consuming content and start embodying truth.